So welcome to this session. Today we're going to be looking at, in particular, the NPQs, how we can align, map and evaluate our school priorities in sort of alignment with the new NPQs, but actually all of these principles will apply to professional development in general. So if you are thinking about how to embed and ensure your professional development is impactful as possible, these strategies should translate to those, but we're going to focus particularly on the NPQs today. So the trouble with professional development, and it was never designed to be this way, but we can often look at it as a collection of things we have, as badges we can collect. And we're seeing that with people doing sort of multiple NPQs, which on the one hand is really excellent, lots and lots of knowledge going into that person. But on the other hand, there's a question of how much is that knowledge being translated and sort of impacted in school. And there's definitely a gap there between the knowing and the doing. And we have a slight challenge in the sector, I think, in terms of we have so much to teach and so much that people need to know, but actually translating that into doing can be a real challenge. And we know lots of things and we know we should do it, but actually we don't do it. And there's lots of reasons for that. Doing new things is scary. It's going against the social norms of maybe your school, of what's already been happening sort of in school. It's going possibly against school improvement, like really key drives. It might just be a habit that we have collected this knowledge and then habitually go back to things we did before. But NPQ knowledge should really be about tweaking what we're doing in school, aligning it with school improvement priorities rather than having it compete with school improvement priorities, and sustaining. So not all aspects of school improvement should be about change. A lot of it should be about sustaining things that are really great. And the NPQs is one way to do that. Just a really quick overview if you don't know what the NPQs are. So there are specialist NPQs, which last 1 year, and leadership NPQs, which last 18 months, as well as the early headship coaching offer. So I'll whiz through them. They're leading behaviour and culture, leading literacy, leading teaching, leading teacher development, and coming in February, leading primary maths. And then the leadership ones are early years leadership, senior leadership, and the early headship coaching offer. So this is not an NPQ sales pitch, but those are what is available out there. So I think the first thing to do when considering, okay, I'm either putting staff on an NPQ or I already have staff on an NPQ, and what can I do with that knowledge, is to sort of diagnose, are they a rock star or are they a superstar? So this comes from Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor, and she describes that there's two types of employees in every organisation. Just because there's something now doesn't mean they're always going to be that thing. It can be sort of a continuum or a flux. And we need both rock stars and superstars to have a really, really successful business, organisation or school. So our rock stars are people we can rely on. They're great at their job. They want to improve in their role, but they're happy doing that role. They haven't at the current time got aspirations to move up, to move through. They just want to stay where they are and be great at that. They're our rock stars. And our superstars are people who are on sort of a bit more of a trajectory. They're looking to progress. They're looking to move up through the ranks. And like I said, Sometimes in your career, you'll be a rock star. Sometimes you'll be a superstar. It very much depends on where you are in life, where you are in your career, sort of your ambitions, and you'll change throughout your career. So I think the first thing to do is really think, is this person a rock star or is this person a superstar? And then you'll be able to start looking at which NPQ might be best for them. Do I want them to develop the knowledge that they need now in their current role, or do I want them to gain new knowledge for them to progress through the school, through the trust, through the organisation? And the real key thing to do there is, one, know your staff, but two, ask your staff. So a really big turn-off of professional development is people being put on a course because their leader or their line manager assume that this is the trajectory that they should be or would like to be on. And this can really detach people from their own development. So explaining this concept to your staff and saying, look, we need rock stars and superstars to make our school great. Where are you and how can I support you in being that, will be the first port of call. Once you've established that, you can start thinking, okay, am I going to use my professional development, my NPQs, to make the most of staff development through the school? And you can sort of map them either against the rockstar and superstar analogy or against a table like this and think, where are they? And therefore, what do they need to do to move forward? And one of the things we can do when looking at this is to sit down with our staff or to just give them sort of these written questions. And there's some coaching questions at the bottom of here. So like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate your leadership at the beginning of your NPQ? So where are you now if you're starting it? Why? And what does a 10 look like to you personally? So what do you want to get out of this? And then you can look at what skills they need to focus on to notch them up 2 notches. So if you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you with this NPQ? Because they all do focus on some aspect of leadership, whether it's leading in their subject, whether it's leading other teachers' development, leading literacy or headship. You can get them to scale that 1 to 10. If they are a 4, getting to a 10 by the end of the NPQ, again, they're not magic, maybe unrealistic, but what we do want to get them to is a 6. So what does their 10 look like? What will their 6 look like? And then how can we get them with using the NPQs, but also things that you've got in school to get them that skills and experience? Talk about what values they bring, how will these support their school priorities? Things like, if you could wave a magic wand, what one thing would you like to see transformed in your school or nursery? And what would be the first step in this happening? Again, that might help you identify which NPQ would be best for your teachers. If they say, oh, I'd love everyone to be absolute avid readers and think this is amazing, then leading literacy is the one for them. If they're going to wave their magic wand and the culture is transformed and everyone is perfectly aligned, then leading behaviour and culture is for them. And you, just by asking these coaching questions, you can pull out the values and again, really align that professional development to something that each individual staff member will buy into and say, yeah, I can see myself doing that. That's important and it links with my values. Saying that, what we don't want is lots and lots of people doing NPQs with lots and lots of different reasons and it not all feeding back to your school, your trust priorities, because then things get muddied, things get misinterpreted. And what we want to do is have a really clear vision and direction for your professional development in your school or your trust, where you can say, this is our overall aim, and this is how we're getting there using this variety of NPQs. So there's sort of 2 ways to think about this. You could either go inside out or outside in. So if we go outside in, first of all, what the first thing you do is think about your trust or school, initiatives and values. If you're in a trust, you'd start with trust level. You'd then think, okay, well, how does that align to my school priorities and what is highlighted in my SIP or my SEF to really make those come alive? Then you go to the next thing and think, right, if my school priority is reading, for example, I'm going to use that. Okay, what learning and module principle from the NPQ in leading literacy or in early years or in senior leadership would align to that? And then how can the impact from that specific learning translate back out into my school priorities and therefore the trust initiative? There's an example here of what that might look like. So the trust have established teaching and learning communities with a focus of sharing good practice. The school priorities would be to improve teaching and learning, specifically highlighting literacy as a focal point. The NPQ would be looking at the explicit instruction module. So the NPQ participant would join a teaching and learning community with the trust and introduce that focus group into the principles of explicit instruction and support the trust and the staff through staff meetings and instructional coaching with key staff members on that particular thing. So you're really honing in on what the modules are in the NPQ and then bringing it back out to impact the trust or the school priorities as a whole. So that's one sort of way to look at it. And I've sent you some of two booklets, one for implementing specialist NPQs in your school or trust and another for implementing leadership. And what you will be able to see in those documents is every single module that every single NPQ covers. So you can look through there to check, right, this is the key thing. This is what we're looking at. This is what I can get my participants to really focus on through our school. The booklets are specifically how Ambition Institute break down the NPQs. However, if you go on the DFE website, you can get the NPQ frameworks, and that covers every single NPQ that all the providers run. So there's a few principles when you're thinking about bringing these NPQs to life and making them run through your improvement plans or run through your school as a whole. The first is to be really specific to your context. This is not sort of a broad brush approach. You will know your school or your trust the most. So each context will vary in approach and how the learning can be adapted. So to have a really clear strategic plan in the direction of professional development and school improvement will help you link those NPQs in rather than the other way around. Plan intentional implementation. Again, one of the challenges of the NPQs of old is that lots of people were doing lots and lots of different projects, and it was pulling staff members and priorities in lots of different directions. But being really intentional in the implementation of applying the knowledge of these NPQs will allow you to have real clarity on what and who and why and how it aligns to your priorities. And there's a few models a little bit later on to look at how you might do that. And the next thing, the hardest thing in school, is to give enough time. So ensure there is a clear plan to give enough time for NPQ participants to embed, evaluate, and sustain both the learning that they're doing, as well as any subsequent initiatives or changes because of the learning. So NPQs are a year, modules are around 6 weeks. So again, think about what time your staff member needs or how that will fit into your school calendar in terms of properly embedding something rather than just that standalone staff meeting. So I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms now, just to talk about what are your schools or trust priorities and how are you using professional development or the NPQs to support these. Break up your conversations, some really interesting conversations. So now what we're going to do is have a little look, hopefully pulling that together about what the long-term picture when you're picking NPQs and supporting staff with NPQs can look like, and then the short-term plan for actually implementing the learning in the here and now. So the long-term picture, I think NPQs obviously fill gaps of immediate knowledge. But what we have got the opportunity to do as well is think about what skills that your teachers might be lacking, or what they would like to look at in their long-term career aspirations. So for example, if you sit down with your teachers and leaders and say, right, can you name me 3 possible roles that you'll do at the pinnacle of your career? And we're not talking about, in the next year, we're talking top tier, we've got to the top. This is where you can see yourself if everything just goes wonderfully. Okay, so it might be, I might be a head teacher, I might be CEO, I might be an education advisor. It could be a whole range of things. You know how many roles there are in schools, but choose the 3 and then talk with them and say, okay, which of these have got common skills? So what common skills would a head teacher, a CEO, and an education advisor all have? And list them all down. Because what then you're doing is saying, when you're doing the NPQ, really focus on those common skills that each of those pinnacle roles have. And you're not then narrowing yourself to, I'm doing this NPQ to be a pastoral lead, or I'm doing this NPQ to be a head teacher. It's, I'm doing this NPQ because I'm going to gain these skills. And with having these skills, I could take this path or this path or this path. But these skills are going to underpin all of it. So that's one way to sort of look at the long-term picture with your staff. And I know, Victoria, you were saying, I've got staff who are really keen and they're sort of my rock stars and superstars at the same time, because they want professional development and they want that trajectory, but actually they want to stay at the school. And this sort of work with them thinking, okay, you're not going to stay at the school forever. So long term, what might that look like? Or even long term in this school, where can you see yourself leading change and really making a difference? And what skills will you need to do that? Right, let's pick those out while we're on our NPQ and really focus on that and think about how we can support you in school or in the trust to maximize those skills. Or you could ask yourselves as leaders, so what are your school or trust priorities for the next 5 years? Again, in 5 years' time, what are your hopes or aspirations? What are the big things you want to tackle? What do you not have to make those a reality, or what you need more of? Do you need more knowledge in one area? Do you need more instructional coaching? Do you need more people who are aware of cognitive science or have a really good understanding of educational research? What do I need more of to get those trust priorities or school priorities in the next 5 years a reality? And then think again, which NPQs can give teachers these skills? And then how can we utilize them in the here and now. So in the 2 booklets that I've sent you, like I said, it's broken down the modules, so you'll be able to see every single module that your teachers will look at over the course of their NPQ. And sometimes you'll be like, right, this module I really want you to focus on and bring out the best in our staff. I want you to train another staff member with that. Or sometimes it's a general sweep of modules that you can say, right, motivation, mechanisms, and teaching and learning, that's what we want to focus on. So when you're doing these courses, that's really what you're going to bring back to the staff meeting, or to me, or to your coach, or to your mentor, whoever it is. Yes, I sent these at 4 o'clock when it started. If you haven't got them, I will send them again afterwards, but hopefully you have. Has everybody else received them? Yeah, see it there. And then, so that's one way of sort of looking long-term, big picture. How do the NPQs fit into the grand scheme of things? Which is all well and good, and we've got a plan, but what are we actually going to do tomorrow? So this could be a way of doing a short-term plan and really implementing that learning. So you, the leaders, could present the school improvement priorities to your NPQ participants and say, these are the things we are focusing on. The participants will then gather some evidence to further sort of evaluate the root causes of those priorities. So they might be like, right, we're really looking at literacy, we're really looking at culture. I'm going to have a bit of an investigation about where I think the root causes might be, thinking about some of the things they've been learning about in their NPQ. Once they've done that, they'll sort of reflect and consider possible strategies that they could do to support those root causes. And they present them to you, like, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. You will then choose one strategy. We can't do 10,000 things at once. In schools, we can barely do one new thing at once. So leaders will choose one strategy for them to do. The NPQ participants will then plan that and begin it on a really small scale. When they've sort of started trialing it, they could bring the results back to the leadership team to evaluate whether, yes, this is successful, this is going to work, and if they can roll that out on a bigger scale. So that's one way to sort of plan in the implementation of NPQs in a step-by-step plan. The other thing we've provided in those documents is some questions. These are definitely not cover all basis questions, but an idea of some impact questions that you might be able to ask either on the outset of the NPQ, or if they've just finished the NPQ. For example, the LTD, which is Leading Teacher Development. So how have participants' awareness of evidence-informed approaches of teaching and current research impacted the school? So not just impacted their own practice, but how has it impacted the whole school? How has the participant contributed to developing and or evaluating whole school CPD? Where have they had the opportunity to do that? Have they supported other colleagues developing teaching, either through one-to-one or a whole staff approach? And by looking through these impact questions, if you've got staff who are just about to go on the NPQ, you might be able to plan in opportunities for them to do these things. And there's some possible evidence sort of on the right-hand side, which you could pop in your SIV, pop in your SEF, retweak, reword, and use as evidence that the impact of the NPQs is being felt on a wider scale. These are the questions, the impact questions you can ask, and some possible evidence for your leadership NPQs. And again, this is really about the whole school, the earlier setting, and looking at sort of where your participant has had a chance to impact more than just their own learning, and really weave it back through those school improvement priorities. to do that, there's 2 frameworks you could use. So the first one is the EF implementation framework that you can use with your participants or on your own with your SLT to look at what is the problem or what is the priority, maybe you want to rephrase it as, what is the intervention description? So what are the NPQ participants going to do to support that problem or priority? What do the activities actually look like in, you know, the day-to-day terms? And then how will you know that they are successful in the short, medium and long term? And how are you going to know sort of the final outcomes in the short, medium and long term? So that's the EF implementation framework that is in the pack as well. And then in the leadership pack, but not in the specialist pack, is Guskey's model for the evaluation of professional development. So Guskey talks through 5 sort of pillars of evaluating professional development. 1 is the participants' reaction, 2 is the participants' learning, the organisation and support, the use of the new knowledge and skills, and then ultimately the thing that everyone's concerned with and is a priority in all schools, because that is the thing that we are in education for. How did it impact on the student learning? So the top tips here are to be clear on what you're intending to measure from the outset, because otherwise, again, it can get really, really murky. So if you link it back to that circle diagram, be really, really clear on, this is my priority, this is how I'm going to measure it, this is how I'm going to know if it worked. And some of these areas might carry more weight than others when you're evaluating impact. So sometimes the student learning outcomes might have a huge sort of impact, a huge weight in your evaluation. Say if you're doing obviously leading teaching, but sometimes the organisation and support might have a larger weighting if your participant is on SL or H, which again might have a different weighting. So I would suggest, first of all, using these 2 models to plan and then evaluate your NPQ participants and how they're working. So that is it from me. I'll stop recording, but we'll hang around and happy to answer any questions or chat through any individual circumstances that you've got.
I'm just going to say thank you and bye, because we've got open evening K. So that's perfect timing, and really